Hey, welcome to something that is incredibly exciting for the future of specialty coffee. So today we're going to be talking about frozen coffee and all the opportunities that we gain when we do this. Now, frozen coffee is such an important thing for us today and into the future, as it will allow us to serve much better coffee in a so much easier way every single day. So first, why are we freezing our coffee? Well, when we have a bag of coffee, it goes through a degassing period, after which a point your coffee is going to be sufficiently degassed and tasting absolutely amazing. So I'm sure you've all opened up a bag of coffee and occasionally it smells amazing, and it doesn't matter what you do with it, it just tastes great as well. It smells really sweet. Yum. And on other days you open it up, it can be a little bit flat, a little bit heavy, lower sweetness, higher acidity. We can have all sorts of problems coming up just because of the age of that coffee. So along comes the idea of frozen coffee. So if we just store our coffee in a bag, we might only have a few weeks to a month worth of shelf life. And within that, maybe only about a week where that coffee is tasting really great. Usually we want to take that coffee and freeze it in time and achieve that same incredible experience every single day. So frozen coffee allows us to take that coffee when it's tasting absolutely exceptional, when the degassing has hit a point where the coffee is super expressive, super sweet. We can lock that down and put it into our freezer to access that anytime that we want. So we started doing a lot of this freezing of coffee for the bar in Sydney at Otter Marrickville, where we started developing larger reserve menus with lots of different coffees on at the same time. Now, this made a big impact on the Sydney scene in coffee, and it's starting to expand throughout all of our other shops as well. Now, what we used to do is vac our coffee into a frozen bag. Now, this has proved to be successful for more than a year worth of aging. So keeping that coffee at its peak for longer than a year, allowing us to serve vintage releases, so 2 different vintages of that same coffee. We've also put our coffee into tubes, and over a few months had that coffee tasting absolutely amazing. Now, we're still doing more in-depth testing of this for longer periods of time, but for the moment we're pretty optimistic that this is going to be able to do extended shelf life for coffee as well in the freezer. So it can be difficult in the cafe to run a big menu of multiple coffees all at the same time, because you're having to dial in the recipe and perfect sort of shot time for that coffee based on its degassing for that day. But when we freeze our coffee, we are able to dial in that coffee when it's frozen and maintain that same recipe until you run out of that coffee. So there's no extra dial in every single day. It's more about just writing down that brew recipe and then repeating that brew recipe in the machine each time that you run it. This also gives us a major benefit because we have, for example, reserve coffees that have a higher price point. So in the past, we might have opened that bag of coffee and then it's going to change and then drop off in quality after a certain amount of time. And if we're not serving that coffee in a short period of time, we actually lose that investment that we made in that experience. But by freezing it down, we're able to actually charge the price and sell it a little slower, but actually recoup the cost and actually make a profit off these coffees as well. So one more huge benefit we gain from frozen coffee is the grind profile. So if you think about something that is flexible, like rubber, when it's at room temperature, when we freeze that, it turns brittle and it can crack. So the same with a coffee bean. When a coffee is frozen, it's going to shatter a lot more readily. And when we put that through the grinder, it means we get less of the larger grind sizes, which we call boulders, giving us a very narrow distribution of small fines and larger grind size. What we get from a more narrow grind distribution is generally a cleaner cup profile, rounder acidity, and a more balanced cup. So over the next few videos, we're going to go into a few more details about how you can use frozen coffee to your advantage in your cafe.